Thank you, Jesselyn. I'm here with Don Henschel, retired professor and professor emeritus. Okay, can we do that again? Emeritus. Sorry, I forgot that last word. Professor emeritus. Thank you, Jesselyn. I'm here with Don Henschel, retired professor and professor emeritus. Mr. Henschel, thank you for being here today.
Oh, I'm tickled to be here.
I have a question. Dealing with the fancy lights, how exactly did you get involved with a project like this?
Well, as you might know, I just retired really from the theater department where I designed scenery all these years. And before we built this building, we did all the shows in what's now called Aiken Auditorium. And of course, the lights set up just outside of that. And so when the fantasy came under the possession of the university and a nonprofit corporation that really owns it, I was doing shows in the theater over there, and we were asked very nicely to if we could help with some of the lighting out there in terms of lighting. Well, I remember the flag, they wanted to fly at night, so it needed to be lit, and where choralers would sing needed some lighting, and so we were helpful in those days, just out of the goodness of our hearts. And then I began to notice that they bought a couple of new displays during that period, and one was the little engine that could. And I had seen the specifications for it and knew that it needed to be weatherproof, but when it showed up, it was nothing but pasteboard and not weatherproof at all like we need in this part of the world. And over the years, I think every metal shop in town, sheet metal shop, has covered various parts of it that now it is weatherproof, but it didn't come that way. And then the next one was the Wizard of Oz, and I remember those characters are supposed to be life-size. Well, if you saw it last night, they're only about 3-4 feet tall, and so I just thought they were spending money on some display work that wasn't really. I thought I could do better for less money, and so at some point I wrote a letter to Jan Thacker, who in those days was the spark plug for the whole thing. In fact, it wouldn't be on campus if it weren't for Jan Thacker, I don't think. And so she invited me to submit a bid on when the next one came up, and in that case, I think that the first one that I did was the Three Little Pigs, and that was in 1983. So that's been going around and around for 32 years now.
How did you, you said the Three Little Pigs? Mm-hmm. How did you decide on doing that display? Like, why did you say, I want to do the Three Little Pigs?
Boy, that's been 30 years. But many discussions deal with thematic elements out there, and to the casual observer, there isn't much of any unifying themes other than Christmas, obviously, But we, in early days, we were really trying to push the idea of fairy tales a good bit, and a lot of the early ones were fairy tales. I might say, you probably wouldn't even know, the name Evel Knievel probably doesn't mean much to you, I guess, but he was a daredevil back when, and for some years, a representation of Evel Knievel existed out there on some kind of a rocket plane, So it's changed a lot over the years, and again, in those days, we were kind of pushing for nursery rhymes, and Three Little Pigs just seemed like a good one. I can't recall really now if I chose it or not, but
did you help design it and bring it to whoever decides to say yes or no on the final say to bring it to the fancy lights?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't bring that sketch, but I noticed just this morning when I was pulling this stuff together that I have a sketch from that. In fact, the university made a Christmas card that year and used the image on that. But yeah, I generally would bring a model like one of these or a sketch of some kind to to the to Jan, really. It would you be back in the old days. Now I guess it would be the committee in general. But well, this last time, the last thing I did was that Nutcracker carousel, and that gentleman who was there running things, Randy Cannibal, took that around to various people and got the okay on that.
And how many hours from like you designing it, you know, sketching it, to doing a model like this, to actually getting it set up for the fantasy lights? How many man hours or how many hours does that take?
Yeah,
how many people usually work on something like that?
Right, I couldn't begin to tell you the hours, but almost always on any of these large ones, I start the Christmas before, and right about now, if there were going to be a new one for next year, they'd need to decide on something and get me started on it. And then generally over Christmas, that's when I do things that I can do indoors, largely at home, like human parts, you know, like that foot. And since the pieces are generally life-size, Wizard of Oz is an exception, but most things that are out there are generally life-size, well then I can cast human body parts, you know, and then make them out of fiberglass. And so that foot is comes off of the Little Shepherd Boy, and was a casting from my son when he was that age, and he's now 30. So that kind of tells you when some of these things were done. But it takes the full year. Again, over the Christmas break, which the university takes for about a month, I try to get these human parts done, and then start immediately after commencement in the spring and work most of the summer to complete the actual structures themselves.
And, you know, dealing with this Christmas Carol right here, once you get the design done, what is the purpose of, is this to bring to the committee to show them this is how we kind of want it?
Or why a model?
Yeah, why a model like this?
Yeah, and I don't do a model for everyone. There's just a drawing here from Cinderella that just shows a couple of elevations of her, and then a couple of different ideas. Like it's drawn with 4 horses and 2 horses. It was an option to have the fairy godmother. It was another option to do I call them the 3 sisters over here.
And you do all these drawings for all the displays. Is that correct?
Right. All these the big ones that I have done. This one's for Santa's workshop. Here it's almost more of a building than a. And
do you still like, even though you're retired, do you still do that today? If they come and say we want to do a new display, or do you still draw it up and do a display like that?
Yeah, it would depend. You know, at some point I need to do either color elevation, so I know how I want to paint it. Like this is a redo of the shoe. There was a shoe years ago. I don't have a before, but this it's totally redone. But I needed to know what it was going to look like, and then in some cases, like the nativity scene. I remember Jan. I did a maquette. That's what a sculptor calls a small piece that's going to be a big piece of one of the wise men. So it was a wise man on a camel, and I remember her taking that around to civic groups in town as a fundraising thing. And again, this one's unusual because the United Supermarket people donated that one, and kind of a nice little story that goes along with that they help us in so many ways. They're such nice folks. But and it was their choice that it be A Christmas Carol, and I was so tickled because I've always wanted. I love Christmas Carol. Who doesn't? I guess. And I always had read it to my children, every year at home, and so and it's so much more complex than the Three Pigs. It's more of it's a more difficult story.
Seems like there's a lot more to it than the three little. Yeah. Is there anything you're currently working on for next year's or years to come of the fantasy lights?
I'm not involved in any future stuff. I'm still making the old stuff go around.
Sure.
In fact, I had an appointment yesterday at 4, and the phone rang at 2:30. I was out in my studio, and it was Joey Greenwood who's running things this year, and the latest thing that I have done is the Nutcracker Carousel, and it wasn't going around, and they were pretty concerned about it. It's just a couple hours before I'm pushing the button, and so I was over here and replaced the belt yesterday afternoon.
So you still, I mean, when something goes wrong, you're the guy to call. Like
I've been doing it for 32 years, and it's a lifetime warranty on this
Yeah,
stuff.
they're like, please come here. I know you're retired, but can you please come and save us? Is that how the phone calls go?
Exactly some of that. Although these guys on the maintenance staff here at MSU have just been marvelous over the years with taking care of things.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, there'll be some working thing, like I think the inside of this turntable back here, that's got the ghosts on it. There was some little problem with that. I came one time, I opened up an inspection cover, I looked in there, and what I had put together in a Rube Goldberg fashion was all machined parts that somebody had really worked over. It's a beautiful job. Never called me, never talked to me, just did it and fixed up my faulty engineering. So they're terrific generally. Now the guys that move the stuff all the time, I've got issues with them every year because things get broken so easily, between the warehouse and here.
Mr. Henschel, thank you again for being here. Thank you for taking your time. It sounds like you're a very busy man.
I'm tickled.
Even though you're tired, it seems like you're the man for the fantasy lights.
I'm happy to be here,
Thank
Cody.
you again.
You bet.
Back to you, Jesselyn.